Hi, Brett. Hi, Marianne.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, Brad.
It seems like things are moving into high gear.
Yes. Yeah, and I started mapping out, let me pull it up so I know what I called it. A project management document. That's what I called it. Which I think was Kate's idea.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
We
So-
don't have to get to that tonight.
No, if we don't, because I said I would do it this week, so.
Well,
yeah.
we can talk about it a little bit, yeah.
I like the format, but I agree we have a lot to cover tonight.
Yeah, I think I could just talk you through the first bit and share it as a Google Doc or something like that. Hey, it's so good to see everybody here on time.
So Melanie, for the minutes, we have a guest, Leslie Luchonic. Can you see how it's spelled? If you look in the participants. I can
Yes,
spell it.
I do.
Okay. All right.
Got it.
Welcome, Leslie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We are right at 7:30 and we usually give people a couple more minutes to join. So we're going to do that.
Here's Tim. He disappeared. Right?
Voting for Savannah. Kate disappeared. Hey, Tim. Oh,
How you doing? Excuse
good.
me.
Is there
There
any
she
way
is.
you can get your name and
My name, did you say?
just for the public? Yeah, just for the public.
Okay, so that's just weird.
You're back.
I know.
I just got a message saying my internet's unstable. So if I disappear, did that happen to you, Kate, too? Oh, boy.
I didn't even get the courtesy of a warning. I just got dropped. So I do wonder whether if that happens again, I think I might just go off video to if I'm having like a bandwidth issue, which would be weird, but possible.
My family now knows they can't be online while I am because it's just, I don't know, our Wi-Fi can't seem to handle it.
Hey, Jim, good to see you.
Yay, thank you, Tim. I just asked him if he could put his name as a Zoom user. Cool.
That's great. So I know Savannah's planning to join us, so we'll just give her a minute more. And then I wonder if I did send around a proposed agenda and 27 billion attachments and links and stuff. I do exaggerate, but I wonder, since we do have the honor of a guest this evening, whether we might want to start with new business and hear from Leslie, if that's your what you'd like, if you have something you're bringing to the meeting, or whether you're just sort of attending. If you could clarify that for us, Leslie, that would be great.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm going to flash my video for a moment. I'm not feeling well.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
So I'm sitting in bed, and you will see me sitting in bed. But fair enough, it's always nice to see somebody's face, if only for 5 seconds, okay?
Okay. There you are.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to see you all.
Oh, and Jill's joining too. That's wonderful.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, she's just logging in.
Right, I had no idea. We're obviously in separate rooms in the house.
Yes.
My intention, desire of just sitting in on the meeting is to listen and watch. I've expressed, concerns about the scale of the library building, and concerns about really avid public participation over the last weeks and months. And those are my concerns. And so, with that kind of view, I'm, looking forward just to sitting in and watching how you guys work.
Okay, great. Thank you, Leslie. And Jill, would you mind just letting us know whether you have any additional goals for joining the meeting tonight, whether there's things that you'd like to say, or whether you're just sort of an observer of democracy in action, like Leslie? Jill, if you're speaking, you're muted. Okay, I'm hoping that Jill can let us know at some point if she has things that she'd like to raise. All right.
Can I ask a clarifying question for the
Yes.
minutes? Does Jill have the same last name?
Different,
No,
Marlin.
it's Marland.
Marling?
Marland.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, thank
In
you.
that gallery, you'll be able to see her, the spelling of her last name.
Yes.
She shows up.
Thanks, Michelle.
Mhm.
Zoom experts.
I'm not an expert.
Pass for one tonight. Okay, I think we should go ahead and get started. I hope that, if Savannah's delayed, that she'll be able to catch up from where we are. So welcome everyone to our September 20th meeting. And thanks everyone for being so prompt. I would like us to start where we usually do, with approval of the minutes. So Melanie sent around a new, improved, revised version, pretty close to the time
Yeah,
of the start.
sorry about that.
No, you know what? I did the same thing to you twice yesterday, so I'm with you. Just if we could work on the latest version that Melanie sent and raise any edits. If you need to take a couple minutes to just review because it's been a busy day, please do.
Yeah, it's the one that in the subject line says take 3.
You know, I printed them out because I like to edit that way and read things, but now I'm not sure if the first page was the second or the third, but anyway. My only comment was there was in the description of where it says, it's about when Susie and Kat and were talking. There was a couple sentences that seemed a little redundant, that's all. Who the audience is and how this will help them, since there are people for whom this infograph would make sense. It seemed to be a little redundant a couple of times, and now I couldn't even tell you exactly where the other redundancy was because I'm looking maybe not at my right version. Maybe you fixed it, I don't know. And then there was another slight thing about, I don't know how far down it is. At a prior Board of Trustees meeting, we decided it was important to get the message across that the Board of Trustees is aware that we need, and I was suggesting the right size of library, because it said that we need to right size the library.
I already changed that, Michelle, to,
Okay, I must have the wrong version. I put one in the recycle bin so I wouldn't get mixed up.
oh,
so I
no,
probably did.
no worries. I changed it to, let's see, where is that? Sorry.
Well, as long as you fix it, that's okay.
Melanie, what you said, what I'm reading is the Board of Trustees is aware that we need a library sized for the town of
Yes,
Shutesbury that
Okay.
meets the needs and resources of the community.
Okay,
correct. Yep.
There's an amount we shouldn't exceed on the new library, but we don't have a not to exceed amount yet. And that, okay.
You want me to change that? We don't have
Yeah,
a,
it's like a contracting term, Melanie, not a not to exceed bid.
not to exceed amount yet. Okay.
Yeah,
yeah, that was similar to my next suggestion, which was down further, where you said two
Mhm.
suggestions. You know where that is? Same paragraph.
Two pieces are
Two
critical.
suggestions, add what
Oh.
they're offering or how it will work.
Oh, yep.
I was saying just delete part of it and say, since we haven't been awarded the grant yet.
Okay. So suggestions, since we haven't been awarded the grant. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So since we haven't been awarded the grant yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Since we. Okay, what else?
Catherine Hilton's name is, she's a CATHER.
Yeah.
C. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Did you have something, Marianne?
Yeah, so down at the bottom of the minutes,
Yep.
So someone asked a question about how the building committee functions in town, and I said I would ask Becky for their charge. But we didn't really, we just sort of speculated about what their charge might be, so I would take out that sort of characterization and just leave
Okay.
it at that.
Okay.
We'll
got it.
ask what the
That's right.
charge is, and I have asked Becky what the charge is, and she's
Okay.
gonna get it for me. So,
Okay.
And then
All right.
Michelle, you had something
Yeah,
else?
I just had one other thing in the other matters. It said we need to have a not to exceed cost for town meeting. It's not that we need to, we'd prefer to, because it's not a requirement of the grant. So I think prefer would be a better word.
All right, sorry, where is that?
Under other matters, it's like 1, 2,
It's
3.
the fourth
Six-
sentence.
Oh,
from
other
the
matters, got
bottom.
it.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's better because need implies that it's required or something.
Oh,
But we
okay,
would
so we,
prefer.
prefer
how
to.
about we
prefer-
intend to?
That's even better because that was our stated intention. At the
Yeah,
meeting.
and in the next
Right.
sentence, I was suggesting we're saying we are planning to ask for a robust cost estimate. Because we're
Okay.
planning to,
Yep.
whatever it said, I crossed it
Oh, and
out.
I'm gonna take out, we're going to aim to meet weekly until mid-October. Brad has agreed to add the answers to the spreadsheet. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know why I added that in. Does anyone know what that means? Brad has agreed
Oh,
to add
it's
the answers to the
it's
spreadsheet.
actually the template, right, Brad?
Right, we're gonna, as we complete parts of the building program, Brad's gonna,
Oh, right, okay.
he's gonna
add
keep the
answers.
master library building program and put
That's
everything in
what
to make
that
sure it
was, okay.
formats properly.
All right, going to
Okay.
add the answers to the,
It would be
So
better
the
to say a
building
robust-
program, form.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. All right.
Can we go back to that language about the cost estimate? Because,
Yes.
so it says we are planning to provide a robust cost estimate, and Michelle just said we're planning to ask for a robust cost
Or
estimate.
request from
And,
MDLC.
and, right, well, and so I think we have to, like, I think we're gonna have to take it on ourselves to get a robust cost estimate.
Yeah. my vision,
And
okay.
not sort of hope that somebody else is gonna provide it. So,
Marianne, when you
yeah.
were stuck in Texas, we talked about this and they said that they would be willing to do that. We just have to ask for it.
No, what they said they'd be, or no, what I heard, which may not be what they said, but what I heard was they would be willing to provide us with a range of costs per square foot. That's not the
So
same as,
not robust.
so well, to my mind, a robust cost estimate is we pick a conservative number within the range of cost per square foot that have been, obtained in recently constructed libraries, okay? Suppose it's $50 to $150. That's totally just, I'm making numbers up out of my head, but it's gonna be way more than that, I'm sure. But we would choose what, we would say, okay, for our library, we think this, based on the, what we want for Shutesbury, what we expect in the building program or whatever, this is the footage range that we're gonna use. And then multiply that and get the figure. So I agree with Marianne that we're gonna have to provide that number.
So what should I be changing in the,
I guess
Meeting
I would
minutes?
I would like clarification because I heard something different, Kate, than what you did.
Okay,
So
then
maybe we
yeah,
should hold
let's
on
get
till
that there. I can email Lauren,
Okay,
and Andrea, if that's okay, and.
Brad's raising his hand. He was there. Maybe he remembers something.
Sorry, Brad, go ahead.
I feel like what we're trying to do is edit the minutes we're trying to do two things at once. One is to have them be accurate. There's no way to be accurate because we don't know their answer. But what we should be doing is having the minutes reflect what we said. And what we were talking about was that we would provide a robust cost estimate. Now, if we find in the future that they're going to provide it, we should say that in a future minutes. But I think these minutes need to say what we talked about last meeting, which was that we're going to do the provision, and until we know different, that's what we're doing. Does that make enough sense?
It's just not what I remember, that's all. So I guess I can't agree.
It's not what you remember from last week's conversation? Or
No,
it's
I
not
don't
what you,
No, and it's not what I recall them saying, so I don't know if it's accurate, so I don't know.
Well-
If everybody else wants to vote on it, I'm fine. It's not what I recall.
keep
It
in
is what I
mind,
So
Oh.
I think I might have interpreted it differently.
keep
It
in
is what
mind
I
too that the, oh, I'm sorry, Kate. go
sorry, no,
ahead.
go ahead, Melanie.
No, I was
please.
just gonna say that last week was so intense with content that I did the best I could with the meeting minutes. So it's good that we're talking about this because I very well may not have gotten certain things right about that. So just, whatever folks remember. I could also always go back to the recording if that would be helpful.
It might be, we could just table this issue, because I don't want it to take up too much more time. I distinctly remember saying that we plan to provide a robust cost estimate. I said that last time, and I've said it a couple other times in other spaces, so I definitely said that. But whether we agreed to that is a different question. And I think we should maybe table the minutes since we're meeting again next week and just verify like Michelle's asking for. I don't see that hurts anything or anybody.
Yeah, I just don't want us to be misquoted and, it's just, and I take notes, but I don't have it there. So that's why I don't really recall
Yeah.
it. Remembering.
Well, it's a good thing we have a recording.
I know.
Yeah. Absolutely, because there was a lot going on last
Other
week.
than
for
that,
sure.
good job, Melanie. This was a
Here,
hard one.
here. It's a
It's
lot.
like that Kermit meme.
Wait, Brad's
Can I
got a
just say
thought.
one other thing before we move on, but take a vote?
Sure.
I did an open meeting law video training last week because I had questions about, you know, when can a couple people meet about a specific task, blah, blah, blah. So I listened to the whole thing. And so in the minutes, we're just supposed to list the documents. We don't have to attach them, but we have to list what documents were talked about. So that's the only other thing I had to add there.
Thank you. And Brad?
There's one part that I didn't understand towards the top in section 2, fourth line down, the 12% number. I didn't know what that 12% was.
I have some clarification about that. Or Marianne, do you want to go?
Yeah, so the 12% was a conservative estimate offered by the MBLC to Susie and Kat and
What, though?
Rita of the ineligible costs.
Oh, so this is the MBLC is estimating that ineligible costs will be about 12% of the total.
Right,
They
right.
gave us a range of 5 to 15% of the total
Okay.
project costs as ineligible. Well, Susie, Kat,
suggested that
and
12
Rita
was a-
suggested that 12 is within the range and towards the conservative side.
So Melanie,
So
maybe
if
you
this-
can just say that 12% is ineligible costs.
Yep, I just added that
Okay.
in.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think it's great that we had this conversation and clarified what we need to, confirm before approving these minutes. I can't make a motion from the chair, but I would appreciate consideration of whether we'd like to table approval until until Melanie's had time to review the recording. Megan, it's been a long day of Zoom, y'all. Michelle, I'm sorry.
Well, since I'm the one questioning it, I'm willing to make the motion to say, we suggest we table it so we can look at the recording to see exactly what was said.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Tim and Brad. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, next on our agenda. Honestly, if we have already a spreadsheet tracking the components of the building program, who's responsible for drafting them, who's responsible for reviewing them, and by when? And it sounds like we do, Brad?
I have two things. One is
Please go.
a master Word document where I'm plugging everything in. And that's based on the headers that the MBLC provided. And then I have an Excel spreadsheet. And right now, all I've been tracking on it is what's completed. It's a list of every line item. I could expand that to be who's doing it and when it's due. I haven't done that yet.
Marianne, do you think you need that level of detail, or do you just
I
want?
made myself a document today and I did it by page number and sometimes put in the titles. And then I put who was working on it, who was editing it, because everything is being worked on and edited. And then if I've assigned a volunteer, so there's some things that I've either assigned a volunteer or have asked a volunteer. So I have my own document, which needs some formatting and some tidying up, which I'll send to you all before next week, because I said I would work on it this week, and it's only Monday, and
Okay, well, that's fantastic. Then I think that the whole next order of business, the project management tool for the building program, is covered like 3 ways, and we don't need to talk about that tonight.
there is one thing in my notes that I wondered if we could do. So there are quite a number of pages of area descriptions, and and that, never mind. I don't need help with it. I was thinking that it would be good, but I don't need help with it. I can sort of write a memo of what I decided and we can go over it next week instead of going through 30 pages. You know, so there are, it isn't 30 pages, but there are a number of pages of templates for area descriptions. So one is the community meeting room, which I sent you, and then bathrooms and the children's room and the teen area and all of these different things. And there are a lot more possible area descriptions than we're going to actually do. We're not going to have all of those areas in our building program. We're not going to have a wellness room. As nice as that sounds. And we're not going to have, there are like 4 different types of small meeting rooms. We're not going to have 4 different small meeting rooms. So I think what I'll do is I'll sort of, I'll make a list, and then if you could look at all of them, and then when I make my list, if you see that there's something not on the list that you thought should have been on the list, then you should let me know. Okay. But I don't think we need to go through it all together. So.
Okay. Can I ask if there's any clarifying questions for Mary Ann about what she just said?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Tim.
I guess the community room was an example of what you're talking about, right? I had some concerns with that document. I mean, it sounds extreme. I had some questions. So are you saying that you've got at least 29 others and you don't really want to review them?
Oh, no. I'm not saying I don't want to. No, we're going to review every one. So they're in the building program template that the Board of Library Commissioners provided. They have every possible program space in a library. And we are not going to have every possible program space because we're building a small library for a small community. If we're building a small library for a small community. And so I think that I know, what our program needs are, and then, so I'll start with those. In the meantime, you all have the template, so you could look at them. And then next week, I'll give you the list of area descriptions that I think we should do. And I will have done them all by next Monday. And then we'll review them. Okay. All right. And that one I did with Lauren and Andrea. So I've been meeting with them weekly. And so I've been meeting with them, and the director of the Otis Library has been in the meetings. And so our homework for the last meeting was we were each supposed to do one area description, and then we went over it together as a group. And so that's why, and I did the community meeting room because I feel like that's the most important. That's a very important element in our building program. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Are there any other questions for Mary Ann? Okay.
Michelle
Oh,
has
sorry,
one.
Michelle, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know if we want to do this now, but I had a comment about the meeting room. Or if you want to just table it till later, because the
Yeah.
trustee stuff, like, let's talk to you off about my input and comparing it to Pelham and off.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we do need to hear that, Michelle, but maybe
Later, yeah, that's
we'll do
fine.
it later if that's
Yep,
okay.
that's
I guess I want to, before Mary Ann jumps into the pool with all these descriptions, I do want to talk a little bit about this sample description of the meeting room at some point tonight, whether it's now or later.
We're going to, the agenda has us working on that after we do the discussion of the draft draft text for our self-reflection that's required part of the program too. So if there are no objections, I propose that we move ahead to that part of the discussion. And I'd like to open it by saying that, just reminding folks that this is a draft. Nothing's written in stone here. It's like written in sand, and the tide can come in. So what I was trying to do was capture the feedback that as many of y'all who gave it incorporated, plus some framing and some further discussion of some things that I will just acknowledge are important to me, but may not be important to everyone. Okay. There are a few things that, you know, I sort of got involved in the writing, and there's a few things that I think we should change. And one is, I think, you know, I need to remember that this is part of a grant application, and it's not really appropriate to name people in grant applications. And so I want to just acknowledge that and change that. I also think, you know, there's a part where I asked for your feedback on a couple places I asked for feedback on the tone that I didn't feel like I'd gotten right. And the more I think about it, the more sure I am I didn't get it right. And I think it's appropriate for trustees to express concern about the conditions that operate in our library, about the lack of running water, about the lack, particularly in a pandemic, about the lack of room making social distancing really hard, about the lack of, you know, real accommodation for people with various kinds of different abilities or disabilities, including mobility challenges and others. But I think I just went in the direction of powerful writing rather than appropriate writing. And I think maybe we should back that up and talk about this as issues of concern rather than with the degree of emotion that I put into the draft. So before we review, I would just like to acknowledge, you know, those things and the changes that I think we should make to what I drafted, and then be really open to hearing other suggestions on changes that we should make. Thanks for letting me set the table. Tim, go ahead, please.
I suspect you're referring to what really stuck out at me were these words like outraged, appalled at the unfairness,
Yes.
deeply embarrassed, ashamed.
Yes.
I feel like those words are not appropriate at all.
I
The
agree.
conditions we're describing are self-evident. If you don't have a toilet, you don't have a toilet, and most people get that and don't need it.
I agree. That's what I meant by sort of getting carried
Okay.
away by trying to make powerful writing instead of appropriate writing.
Okay.
And I just really acknowledge that.
Other than that, there was a line at the end of this. Oh, wait, somebody else go ahead. I need to look back at my notes before I go further.
I agree with you, Tim. I think that we could still use some words of concern, but maybe not with so much passion and emotion.
Busted.
Because they are very factual things. I mean, they're there. The fact that we don't have running water, you know, that a person in a wheelchair can get in, but they can't move around. All those things are factual for sure.
Thank you,
Nobody has
Michelle.
any other words, but
We'll find them.
I found what I was looking for. Towards the end, there's a paragraph labeled climate resiliency. And at the bottom of that page, the line says, envision a library that serves the, and the next page I have has the word changed. I either have a printing problem or there's something wrong in the document. Does anybody else have that same sequence of words?
What page are you talking about, Tim?
My pages are not numbered. I can only tell you that if you go to the very bottom of the document, in italics, there's a caption heading. It says climate resiliency.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
And that's almost at the end of the page. The last line of that page says we should envision a library that serves the, and it goes to the next page. The next page I have says change to more.
That's strange because I.
You've got a
I
printing
have
problem.
everything. Yeah. it was a
Okay,
printing
okay,
problem.
that I've got a printing problem then, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion that we like maybe not jump around so much, but maybe go page by
Walk
page?
through
Would that be
page
okay?
by page. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Can I ask a question in the meeting minutes? Do you want me to keep track of these edits or are you gonna keep track of these edits, Kate?
How about I do that?
Okay,
I think that would be easier.
it would.
Okay, so if we're, are we done on the first page? Because I have a suggestion for the second page. Is that okay?
Um,
Yeah.
I don't see any other notes for the first page. So yeah, page 2 would be great. Thanks.
Okay. So it's like the second new paragraph. And then it said, it's a minor thing. I just thought townspeople couldn't borrow and browse and collect materials. So story hour and exercise class shifted to Zoom. That just seemed to be a more efficient way of saying it because I think it was ended up being said, something like that was said twice. And let's see what, so.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. I might have put it in the edits to the comments to you. The townspeople.
I didn't see them.
Okay, maybe I did after. Townspeople couldn't browse and collect materials, so story hour and exercise classes shifted to Zoom. And curbside pickup was offered long before other libraries in our area. That could probably be a period, right? And then, because there's another, and when the case rate dropped in our county, established visits by appointment. Or, yeah, it's probably fine. I just think it's a good point to make it that it was offered by Mary Ann long before it was other places.
I'm sorry, I'm still not getting it because it does say offered before other area. I'm not sure what you're asking me to cut.
No, I was just adding was offered. So curbside, so story hour and exercise classes shifted to Zoom. Oh, that was the sentence before. I'm sorry, I can't read my arrows. That's the sentence before. This one would be, so curbside pickup was offered long before other libraries in our area.
I don't get where the so comes from. It's not related to children not being able to go to school.
No, it's townspeople couldn't browse and collect materials. So you put she offered, so if we take out the she, it just says so
Okay.
curbside pickup and blah, blah, blah was offered
Oh,
long before
got
other
you.
libraries in our area. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and I would say the library offered. So, you know, like you already said, Kate, that we shouldn't use my name is used a lot, and you said it, but instead of saying so offered, I would say the library offered, you know, okay. Because that's in their sort of grant writing and grant reporting documentation, they,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Thank you. What else you got? Sorry that took me so long to grasp, Michelle.
And part of it was my problem. My arrow was for the line above, and I was reading the wrong thing. So sorry about that.
Can I just go back for a second to the conversation we were having about the powerful language versus the appropriate language? I completely agree with that, but I do think that it was a useful exercise to put this language in there, because the goal is to use appropriate language for this grant in a way that when they read it, they do feel what we feel. You know, they should read it and feel like, oh my gosh, you know, the librarian and the library staff and parents have to worry about children burning their hands on the heat grate. You know, like that's like really serious. You know, and so I just want to point that out, that I think that, you know, that there's a way to talk about it so that it's, you know, yeah, we're not saying like, you know, this is appalling, you know, but that the feeling is there when
Well,
they
you
read
know,
the grant.
If I might respond to that, I think I did a lot better in the climate impact section, solving the same problem, right? This is a matter of grave concern to many, many people. And I let the facts speak for themselves there. And because that's what I'm used to doing. Whereas, you know, and I just think I wound myself up, and it's, I think that it's possible to get powerful information across in a more dispassionate way. So I felt better for getting it off my chest, but I'm not sure it serves the purpose of the grant as well.
No, I agree. I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that we need to, you know, we still need to write it in a way that,
Yeah,
you know, the facts
Yeah.
speak to themselves. But when you wrote the climate resiliency part, it wasn't boring. You know, you read it
Yeah.
and it was like compelling. You know, it should be, we should
Yes.
still make sure it's compelling.
I hear you. That's helpful. Marianne was next, I think. And
I was just going to say that, like, this is when we're talking about sort of the sanitation issues, it's this is an especially sort of emotional time, you know, and especially with, you know, with cases surging again. And so it's, you know, we're stuck with this reality of this really inadequate building, and so I had a moment yesterday where if I was writing this, it would have been, you know, like I think back to December when I actually had COVID and was in the library with volunteers, and the fear I had that I had infected them. And I didn't, luckily, but like and now, you know, we're open to the public, and I have this fear of, you know, of infecting the public, and because it's such a small, tight space. So I think, good. So we've said all of that. Now we just tone it down a little bit. They get it, you know?
yeah, and thank you, because that is exactly, it's the fear
Yes.
of being
Yeah.
responsible for a space that's not safe that just feels, sorry, I'm gonna be quiet now. Michelle, I see you next.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, yeah, I mean, we wrote about the similar things in the last building program too. Nothing has changed except for COVID has made the health and sanitation a more serious issue, and the space issue. But yeah, I still think we can tone it down a little bit and still say the same thing. They know. They've been
Absolutely,
there.
we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate your being kind and getting us back on the right direction.
So, Marianne, I just wanted to say, sometimes when it says the library, I feel like it should be like the library director did this, because you did. The library is a building. It can't really do some of
I
the
know.
things. And that's a way of acknowledging the work that you do. And
I
I
know.
think that that's where,
Yeah.
sometimes when it says the library, I think we're better served by saying the library director did this, because you did. And you offered that curbside pickup way before any other libraries in the state were. And I think we just have to acknowledge it. So forget the library, it's the library director did this.
I think that
that's my
I
spiel.
think that's okay too. I mean, because it really, especially because, you know, in those beginning months, all sort of non-essential personnel were ordered to stay home. So it really was, you know, it really was just me.
Mhm.
And in other libraries, it was just the library directors. So, yeah.
Thank you. Tim, please go ahead.
I think we need to keep in focus the purpose of this whole thing, which is to get a grant. And although we're all very proud and very pleased to have Mary Ann here, the purpose of it is not to let them know we like Mary Ann. So I think when we talk about Mary Ann in relation to this, we should talk about, however we want to describe her as the director or whatever, how they were able to fortunately jump in and do workarounds around these severe limitations of our facilities.
Mhm.
And I think when we reference her, it would be helpful to reference how she, and make it clear how she was able to struggle and make do with inadequate facilities, which pushes our desire to get a grant more versus promoting Mary Ann, which I'm happy to do, but I'm not sure that's what we're trying to get at here.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I totally agree with you. I was referencing the next page, which was where I was talking about the services she was offering. I totally agree with you as far as the part that we were talking about, the inadequacies. I totally agree with you. I was just talking about the next page, on page 2, where we were talking about what the library director did, because I think that's worth acknowledging. Because it's the community service aspect of the job and this customer service.
But we're applying for a grant. We're not.
But we were
Th- th-
asked,
This
we
has
were
nothing
asked.
to do with. Go ahead.
Well,
Oh,
it
I'm
does for
sorry,
the
I
part that we're
interrupted
talking
you,
about, it
but
does.
we were asked what areas of excellence our library has. And an area of excellence that was identified in this document that we worked on together was the quality and quantity of services that are offered, right? And I agree with depersonalizing that a bit, you know, particularly like not naming Mary Ann, I think is right, but we were asked this question, and it seems to me that this is an honest answer. And go ahead, Mary Ann.
They also want to know that we have the capacity to do this project, right? So they want to know that you have a library director that has the skills to pull off a construction project. So we don't, and you know, so we don't want to make it about me, because it isn't about me, because I'm not a person in a vacuum, right? It's me responding to the community responded to me responding back. It's, you know, it's this cyclical thing, but I do think that what we do is quite unusual, and we should talk about it, but just take my name out. And sometimes, and the other thing is that what we do really is, at the same time, it really is me, right? It didn't happen before I was the library director. And some of it isn't sustainable. If I weren't here, some of what I do is not sustainable with our current facilities. Some of what I do might be sustainable with our current facilities, but some of it isn't, because because part of my house is library, and because the library is my job, but it's my hobby too, you know, so where if, you know, if another library staff doesn't have to work on securing the new building, then the services can be sustainable, you know. But that's for a different section, that little bit of a story. But yeah.
So the other thing I would say, I mean, I really appreciate, you know, Tim keeping us focused on the purpose of the document, right? And, you know, what's in here should be justifiable in those terms. I also think that funders often want to see that you can absorb and make full use of what they're offering. And one way to prove that we can do that is to show what we're already doing, despite the size and other constraints, and give them confidence that this is a community that will make the most of a new library, because we make the absolute ultimate most of an old and small library. So go ahead, Tim, please.
I like what Mary Ann said, that they're looking to know that we can make the greatest use of this grant by having the greatest possible administrative person in there. I just think the way that is said is, I don't want to go through and edit it, but I would like to see something more like the program, the programs and possibilities, et cetera, of a new library can absolutely be explored to their ultimate end by our current library director, so that we're focusing on Mary Ann's point that, yeah, we can make better use of this building than anybody in Western Massachusetts, because we have the person to do it. And maybe it sounds like a nuance, but that's a little different than saying, yay, Mary Ann. The purpose is to get a grant. And part of that thing that they want to know, the way Mary Ann puts it, is they want to know, hey, have we got the people that can get things going once they get the grant? And when the building's there, can they make an outstanding library? Because this grant, as MLBC members, we want it to be an outstanding success. It won't be an outstanding success without outstanding people. So it's more of just a little bit of a shift in the emphasis. It's not a de-emphasis
Understood.
of Mary Ann or anything like that. It's just
No,
more
understood.
goal-oriented. Okay.
So I see you, Michelle. I would just say that I hear what you're saying, and if you have edits, I would love to see them. That would be really helpful.
Okay, I haven't on that area done it yet, but I could do that.
But yeah, when you have a chance, I welcome that. And Michelle, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Tim, maybe if that would be the best thing, I did some edits before the meeting, because I wasn't sure where you're talking about. We were talking about before you brought that up was the part that was about the library's excellence. Maybe that's the part that would go in the trustees' vision for new library, perhaps, which is page like 3. But I guess that was just my question. So maybe if you look at it and stick your edits in there, that might be more helpful to Kate, since she's the author of this.
When do you need that by, Kate?
When does Mary Ann need this bit by?
Well,
Yesterday.
Yeah, right. Yes. That's what I told every volunteer I talked to today. I said I needed it yesterday. So,
Okay,
so anyway, you know, so Tim,
I'll go through it tomorrow.
right, get it to
Great.
Kate, and then maybe if we could say that we're going to have this section done for next Monday, so Brad can put it in the, you know, in the document. Okay.
And
that
just,
sounds great.
you know, I get a little confused about the open meeting business, but I'll just make the edits, transmit the document, and no discussion and emails, right?
That's right. No
Because
discussion,
here we
no
are
email.
talking about it in, you know, we're talking about it in an open meeting now, and then the plan is that you're going to send your thoughts to Kate, and then Kate will, you know, you're going to take the document, insert your your thoughts in a way that she can then see them. So either using track changes or a different color, and then,
Track changes and comments, please.
yes, okay.
And anyone who wants to do that, go ahead and do it. Some of you already have, but anyone who wants to give feedback, I would welcome it. I'll handle version control. I'm really used to that. And don't worry about it. Just send me what you've got. Track changes on and comments. Okay? Great. So we are only on page 3, I guess. What do we have for any of the rest of it? Comments or other thoughts? Brad,
Just want to say, oh, I'm sorry.
Melanie first and then Brad.
Oh, I just want to say that I think the climate resiliency part is going to help make our grant proposal stand out. I think that anything that we have on that, I think that it's, I mean, it should be part of anybody's grant proposal, but it's, it's just really well written. I think that it's definitely something that I'm sure we're all concerned about, and kind of incorporating that into the building program, I think it is just really good. And I appreciate you writing that.
Thank you, Melanie. I have, I'd like to, I saw Brad's hand but can I respond to that directly? Is that okay, Brad? I have concerns about it. It's not the MBLC's job to, it is their stated goal to build a efficient and sustainable building. It is their stated goal to have renewable energy, to have the building serve as a heating cooling center. It's not their job to build an emergency shelter for sure. And I don't want to open a whole can of worms by using those words if we don't think we need to.
But you don't say that though. You say you think the building should be built in a way, which I agree, that it can be added on to at some point if that becomes required. I mean, that's how I read it, that, that there are things about it that allow for emergency support, right? But not
Yeah.
that, right? But not like, it's not an emergency shelter, but the reality of living in Shutesbury is such that we're going to need certain things in our library that other communities may not need. Or it would be
obviously, I agree
helpful to
with
have
you.
those things.
Obviously, I agree with you as a
Yeah.
matter of fact, but as a matter of, this grant application, I would love to hear what others think. And Brad, you've been waiting very patiently for a long time. So could we go to you next?
I didn't actually have a comment. My hand up wasn't me, but I do have one now. I
Okay.
feel like I like the general thing we've all put into this. I particularly like the comments that have been made about improving it. And at this point, I'm getting lost. And what would work better for me is to sit down with everything we've talked about and to go through and say, oh, I think, and send you a draft. It's hard to get this nitpicky on Zoom. And I feel like a lot of us have things that would be easier done by sending you a draft and looking at it again. So I have a vote for that.
Okay, thank you. I saw Tim maybe with a response.
I don't feel like we're nitpicking, Brad. I think there's some, for lack of a better word, policy approaches or general overall content things that is what we're talking about, like over emotional words, or the abilities of the library director to put everything into action. And I think in this last area about emergency facilities, et cetera, it might help us all to have a little bit of talk about whether that's appropriate in this document. If so, how should it be worded, et cetera. And then people can go off and do their individual edits and send it to Kate. My concern about references to emergency facilities is that we emphasize the interest in flexibility should the town want to use or convert or add on to a building. Okay, but I don't want to, in my opinion, create an impression to the town of Shutesbury that we're trying to create a combination library and emergency shelter.
Exactly.
That would be a very hazardous thing to do, and that's not what we're trying to do.
Agreed.
But if there is a brand new building in town, it's a library building, and we had an emergency, and we had a 2-week generator versus nothing. Okay, what we need is the flexibility to hook a generator up or something that the town might decide to do later. Yeah, I think flexibility, and now I'm getting to the nitty gritty, but I think flexibility of a future alternative or side-by-side use, but to emphasize too much of it, that concept now I think would be a little hazardous.
Okay, I saw Marianne's hand first, and this is exactly the conversation I was hoping we would have, because this was the concern that I even named in the comments in my document. So Marianne first, and then Brad, please.
So I think we have a chance to build a library. I think we have a chance to get this grant, and we have a chance to build a library, which we desperately need. Library services it's incredibly hard running the library now. Incredibly hard. I know I make it look easy. I'm exhausted. I am overwhelmed. And it doesn't feel sustainable. It some days it feels like it's not like the library will not be able to, we won't be able to have a library under these conditions. And I mean, I'm walking across the street to use the bathroom, I'm telling people they can't use the bathroom. It's dangerous to walk across the street. So I think we have a chance to get this grant. And then, so that's one thing, we've got a 50% chance of getting this grant. And then the other thing is we've got a town where some people are very concerned about the potential cost of this project. And if we make it more than a library, it can't be everything we want it to be. So I'm totally with you, Kate, on a shower, on laundry facilities, on power, but not a generator, Tim. Tesla batteries. So I'm going to order them now so that when the building is ready, we'll get them because they're back ordered. So something weird is
That
happening.
was a joke for the
Okay.
minute.
Okay. So if we can think about climate resiliency, but not ask the MBLC to think bigger than they're ready to start thinking. So Kate, this is like your area of expertise and even an interest of mine, right? But, like taking care of people in any way is clearly an interest of mine. But if we can think of, okay, what are some small things we can do that that are outside of what library people think of, but that would make our town a more resilient town, but not, you know, promise more than the MBLC wants to be involved in delivering, and ask the town to think further than they want to think, you know, and thinking about climate change, you know, while generally people in Shutesbury, I think, you know, can sort of see the big picture and understand that climate change is happening, and appreciate that there are scientists who have been predicting climate change. I think, taking steps towards resiliency is a conversation in itself. And like right now, we have a 768 square foot, one room library that doesn't have a bathroom. So we're back to like our composting toilet is now a biohazard. Not that it wasn't a biohazard before, but it's you know, it's a biohazard, and in a pandemic, nobody can wash their hands. You know, which means I'm using a tremendous amount of hand sanitizer, which has its own health implications potentially, right? So I think, let's think if we could think a little bit smaller about this and just build the library with a little bit of climate resiliency features, so we have more than the absolute nothing that we have right now. And we, you know, we're not going to house anybody overnight in this library, but they will be able to come in and take a shower. I think we could get that by the MBLC. We probably have to pay for it ourselves, but a shower is cheap. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
okay.
Brad, were you in line? I lost track of the line. Yes, you were. Okay, thank you. And I've got a response to you. Surprise, surprise.
Marianne said a lot of what I was feeling. I agree that the language goes farther than we want, and I feel like we can take that offline and work on it. I feel like the part on climate resiliency is longer than we want, and it sort of takes us off track, and I think we can condense it in a very reasonable way. And I think we all agree on that, and we can do that offline. I feel like, in a way, I'm not sure it's the same as what Marianne was saying, but something similar. I feel like what I want out of this is a library, not an emergency shelter. And that if it's ever looks like it is an emergency shelter, I feel like that endangers the prospect of getting the funding, of getting the library in the first place. And so
Yeah.
I want to look at it again after this conversation from the standpoint of, well, where does it cross that line? And let's look for ways to leave expansion possibilities for something else that is not an MBLC project.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it has to stop there. But in all those cases, I feel like we've said all this. And this is my answer to Tim, really. I agree with you, Tim, because I feel like what we've just gone through has been useful to me too. But I feel like we're repeating ourselves to some extent. And what I would love to do is to, with all this in mind, go and look at that and come up with some concrete suggestions.
I would really value
Otherwise, I
that.
feel like we'll go too far or too long. This will take forever.
I agree. There's one other thing that this is exactly the line that I think we need to walk. And my tactic was to see where is the boundary for us. I knew it was there, and I knew it was probably behind me. Okay. But there's another piece of this for me, and that I'd like us to think about as we edit, which is that it is possible that Congress, by the end of this year, is going to appropriate $2.4 trillion for infrastructure and climate change action, including mitigation and resilience. Okay, I would bet on the resilience more than I'd bet on the mitigation. Okay, but between the bipartisan infrastructure deal and the budget reconciliation package now being negotiated, if they pass, with, it could be that high. It is unlikely to be less than $1.5 trillion. That money's going to go somewhere. And all I'm asking is, no, it's not all I'm asking, but what I'd like us to think about is what happens if that money passes and that act comes in and we see an opportunity and we have champions at the federal level who could help direct some of that money to us. Have we done anything that would preclude that? And Brad, go ahead, please.
I feel like that's a different grant, and I would love it personally. I think it's a great grant. And that gets back to my feeling of what I'm looking for as a library. Ignore climate change, ignore resiliency, ignore all of that. I feel like one of the things that we need with this library is to plan for the future we don't know yet. And for me, that means to leave space to add on. And this might be a separate grant that gets added on. And I don't think the Mass Board of Library Commissioners cares about that. That becomes a separate program.
I agree.
So I feel like being ready to grab it, but it may not be directly related to the MBLC.
I agree. The only thing I would say is that the building program is instructions to the architect. And if we leave room for more, if the money flows quicker, then it's cheaper to build one thing at once than it is to, but I understand this is maybe, I really do understand what you're saying. I just want you to have the context from the federal level that I work at that may not be clear, but I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to look forward eagerly to your edits on all of this document. And I totally realize what everyone is saying and that this is too far. And I'm not arguing to keep it. I would just like you, as you edit, to keep these pieces in mind and see how that affects how you think. Is that fair to ask? Yes? Excellent. Okay. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I just want to say, to me, it may not affect others this way, but when I see, words like showers and laundry doing laundry in association with a grant for library building, I have to raise my eyebrows. It's just not fitting for me, and I'm concerned that some of this stuff. Well, I'm doing what Brad said. I'm repeating it over and over again. I have concerns, and I think that at this point they're all expressed best in edits. So, is it appropriate to make a motion that we all
Move on?
do some edits and then move on to the next subject?
Absolutely, it is.
That's my motion then.
Now a second. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
You could say aye for the recording. That might be helpful for Melanie. I'm not sure.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, thank you all so much. Believe it or not, we were exactly on time for that section. I know it felt long, but we were on time. All right, Marianne, can I turn it over to you to sort of help us figure out what kinds of review you need for these documents and by when?
Okay, so
Is that useful to you for this
it
time?
is, yeah.
Okay.
So I want to make sure. So I think these documents, with the exception of the online one, which Melanie sent me some ideas on that, and then I'm waiting to hear from Molly Moss. Because we have so few online resources, it's hard to talk about online resources. But mostly I feel pretty good about these documents. They may need a little bit of editing, but I think they're in really good shape. So So like if you have sort of questions about them, or, or if something's not clear, you should let me know. But I'm sort of ready to put them, so the circulation one and the programming one, I'm ready to kind of plunk those into the building program. And then the online one I'm still working on. And this is all from one section. And there are 2 more pieces in that section that are much smaller. So I feel pretty good about them, and I just want to see, do they sound okay to you? Did they raise any red flags? Do you think that they're, good to go, with the exception of crossed T's and maybe, switching some words around here and there? And then I want to just make sure that we have time to talk about the area description of the community meeting room, because Tim seems to have concerns. And are we going until 9? So you're muted, Michelle. So,
Yeah, I had some concerns about the community room also.
okay. So if people sort of are sort of ready to give those other the circulation and the programming a thumbs up, we can say those are okay. I know that the online needs work, online programming needs work. And then the other thing is the community meeting room. So, and that is, I made some big decisions with the community meeting room. So I am curious about what you think of that. So maybe we should talk about that.
So I didn't have a chance to read all of them. I read some of them, but I'll have to review them again just to remember. But so they looked good to me when I first looked at these things. So I'll do that by tomorrow in case I see anything.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
well, Tim, did you want to go first about the community room, or?
Well, actually, I wanted to comment about the other documents.
Oh.
I thought they were all good, and I have a few extremely minor edits, but when all of these documents are assembled into a final grant, I'd like to suggest that we have one or a combination of 2 people edit the entire document, so that, because there's bits and pieces of different people in these things, and stylistically, the whole thing should be cohesive.
It doesn't matter if the styles are different. So that's, yeah.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but that was my thought.
Melanie, go ahead.
I mean, to the extent to
And then
which this
some-
matters, on October 11th, I'm gonna take that whole day to just do, be available to do whatever needs to be done for any last minute edits and stuff.
Great, thank you. Marianne, I mean, my understanding from what is that the unity of style is not important here, in part because this is supposed to be this is a huge document that gathers community input and requires more than one person to write. And if the styles are different, it just shows that there were many hands, and there have been. So there's actually, I could imagine some benefit to it not being like seamless.
And when we submitted our grant application, 10 years ago, and it was like 200 pages, it was, and we had several people who write grants read that one. It's really, this is a community library written by a community of voices. And unless we, and for somebody to kind of take all of somebody would have to rewrite it all, and we can't, but making sure that all of the data is correct, and that'll really fall on me, and that it's, that it's a true story, and that falls on all of us, and that's also about the data, and then, and that it, and that it reads well, and that we all understand what we are saying. But each of the, Molly Moss is going to be writing some of the pieces, and how she writes is going to be different than how I write, and how Kate writes is different than how Melanie writes, and how Michelle writes is different than, you know, and since we're all writing different pieces, it's going to have different voices, but the Board of Library Commissioners understands that. And I think either in that meeting at one point they said that, you know, they said it was okay if different people wrote different pieces. So
Yeah,
they're
they
expecting it to
expected it.
happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
they did say that,
Yeah.
and they're expecting that, so.
Yeah.
And that was true last time too. I mean, sometimes lift neck people would be arguing over commas and this and that, but you know, everybody's style was a little bit different. Some people were more flowery, some people were more factual. It's just the way it is.
Thank you. Okay. Are we ready to dive into the community meeting room piece? Yeah? Go ahead, Michelle.
So, Marian, when I saw the size, I thought, So I decided to look at a community room that I happened to have used last March, a week before the world shut down, and that was Pelham. And Pelham's occupancy is 60 people, supposedly, but we had 27 or so preschool staff with 4 tables, and we were crowded. So that's my concern, having a room that has a 10 people bigger occupancy. Once you put tables in there, I was just like really concerned. So what I wondered, like, when you had a lot of like project kind of things like the felting and stuff like that, and there were a lot of tables in the town hall, like, do you know what the square footage of that room is? Because we weren't bumping into each other. It was pretty roomy. Like we had, in Pelham, we had 6 people at each table and it was tight. And they were long rectangular tables. So that's the only thing that's the absolute only thing I was concerned about. Everything else looks perfect.
I'm going to
Having lived
recognize
that
Brad,
situation.
who knows something about people per square foot for occupancy.
Okay,
You're muted,
You're
Brad.
muted, Brad.
yeah.
There you go. My comment is that occupancy is not related to people at tables. Occupancy is the maximum number of people that are allowed in that space in an acceptably crowded condition. And what that means is rows of chairs. Once, you know, what this would be saying is that you can't have, what was the number, 50?
Yeah,
I'll get to there again. You can't have more than 50 people in the room at once. I'm actually not quite sure about this. When I was talking about this with an architect at one point, they said these are standing people. And it doesn't have anything to do with tables. If you want space for a large number of tables, then you have to have a much higher occupancy because the occupancy is not related to the tables.
that's what I figured. That's why I was concerned, having worked, you know, we spent a day in a room that is a little smaller than what we're talking about. And so I just thought back to some of the felting things that were pretty popular. Yeah, go ahead.
So
Marianne, go
this
ahead.
this 700 square foot room is about the same size as the town hall meeting room. An architectural guideline is 10 to 15 feet per person sitting in a chair. So when you're you know, when you're planning square footage per person, so 50 people at 15 feet a person is 750 feet. And then 15 yoga people. Let's see. So what I did was, so the way they're asking us to think about this is different than the last time. Where in the last time it was like you choose your design population, and then there were these standards, these Wisconsin standards that you applied, right? And this time they were asking us to think about our current use and the use, you know, and the uses people are asking for, and then design spaces that meet those needs. And so So, so anyway, this room is the same size as the Irving room. And that 50 people, when I think about that 50 people, I think of 50 people sitting in chairs and then a presenter up front. So you need room for a table up front, or room for, a table in the back. I'm just thinking about the type of programs that we already have. And we do have programs with 50 to 100 people, or we have had programs with that many people, but most of our programs aren't that big. And so in the specifications in this this document, it says, that there would be double wide doors that would open, that would create an overflow area into the body of the library, and then also an overflow area into some outdoor programming space. So and this room, in our last building program, I think was 300 square feet bigger. And I do not believe that the town will vote for a building program that is larger than the last program. For years, we've been saying it needs to be a smaller project. Now, and I think what we were thinking is less expensive, and less expensive is not possible because it's 10 years later and inflation happened. But there are new design features that we want now that we didn't want then. And we want them now because they're part of how we're using libraries now. So, there was a little local history room in that last plan. But there wasn't, but it was really going to be sort of filled with stuff, and it wasn't going to be a flexible sort of collaborative working space or private study space or tutoring space. And I think we know now that we really need that kind of thing. And then that last plan was really, really skimpy on staff workspace. And I think we're really going to need to be able to say that, that if we're going to have, like now or before the pandemic, we would sometimes have 2 or 3 people in that staff workspace that we have now. And very occasionally now there will be 2 of us sitting in there working in there, even though, we're not really 6 feet apart. And so I think we're going to really need to think about staff workspace and make sure that we design safe, staff workspace where people can be sitting together in the staff workspace, but far enough apart so that they maybe don't have to have a mask on. And I really hate to be talking about designing this library with COVID in mind, but when we talk about climate change and we talk about pandemics, like science is telling us that we can expect the next pandemic, and science is telling us that COVID is going to be endemic. And just, it's not going to go away. So we missed that boat. So I think, we need to think about, okay, in the last plan, we really did plan for, and every library director I've talked to said, you need more community meeting space, bigger programming space. And so that's what we did. But I really think we can't have it all. So let's just have what we need most of the time. And it's still a generous room.
Michelle first, then Tim.
I feel better knowing it's the same size as the town hall. I just envisioned how crowded we were in Pelham, and I don't know what their square footage is. I couldn't find it anywhere, but just thinking of the occupancy, I was concerned. But thank you for explaining. That was helpful.
Tim?
How locked in, so to speak, do these room descriptions put us? For example, if we have a building program that says 700 square foot room, and then after the building program submitted, we meet with architects, we continue to talk and decide, wait a minute, 1,000 square feet is really what's going to work. How locked in do these documents make us? What is your understanding, Marianne?
So here's the process. This building program is part of our grant application. And it is a set of instructions to an architect. It's what we base using professional guidance, that robust cost estimate on. And so if you're going to add 300 square feet in one area, you're going to have to take it away in another, or, because we're going to be asking. So here's how this works. We submit the building program, we submit the grant application. They choose, a bunch of other stuff happens. They choose a project, and then if they choose us, we ask town meeting to vote on it. And town meeting is voting on a not to exceed dollar figure. And if we turn around and say, oh, we're making that bigger. And in the last process, when the project failed, one of the strategies we used was to try and cut the cost. And you could cut a project. You can change a project by 10%, one direction or the other, but you have to be able to fund it. And so I'm hearing voices who are concerned. I'm not hearing voices out loud. People aren't really talking to me right now, other than you people. But I'm just hearing the voices of our community who have been telling me that they're concerned about how much this project is going to cost. And I am aware that the Irving Library, which congratulations to the town of Irving. That is an amazing facility. Good for them. I'm so happy for them. That's the library for them. That library cannot be staffed by one person. I have been saying for 14 years that we're going to build a library that can be staffed by one person, because staffing is our operating cost. Staffing is 80% of our operating budget. It might be 70% or something. Like, I can take those numbers and figure it out myself using your formulas, Tim. So we're going to design a library that can be staffed by the same size staff we have now, so that the operating costs don't increase at some astronomical rate that this town can't support, right? So I'm proposing that the community meeting room is this size because it meets most of our need, yet is flexible in its design to allow some overflow. And right now we have nothing, and this is going to be really something pretty awesome. So, and it's a lot bigger than that Pelham room for sure. So, okay.
I'm probably the naive guy on the board here, because I haven't been through the library from years ago. So everybody, please forgive me for some of my questions.
I haven't either, Tim. I wasn't living here then.
Okay, but it sounds like one person, a librarian, is doing what, in my mind, I would think is done in consultation with an architect, a construction person, et cetera, to resolve a lot of questions about how you make a building, how you decide each component, et cetera. So the one part of me says, well, no problem, because Mary Ann's been doing this forever and has a complete knowledge of exactly what kind of space, et cetera, is needed. The other part of me says, well, wait a minute, Mary Ann's not an architect. So I'm just kind of, and this is my lack of exposure to this process, but I have to throw out that question, because
Go
I'd hate to
ahead.
see somebody, us say, well, 700 square foot room, cool. And then later we realize that, wait a minute, that 700 square feet is only for standing people or whatever, some other kind of thing looms
Yeah.
up.
Let's
So-
let Mary Ann answer, okay?
So the MBLC feels very strongly that your librarian is the best trained and best equipped person to decide the library programming spaces. And it's based on data, right? So like I went through my books of programs. I have books of programs, and I wrote down how many people come to the programs. And then I did things. I asked an architect to tell me how much room I needed per person for a yoga class, and this room will accommodate plenty of yoga people. Not that the Board of Library Commissioners is making us a yoga studio. They're not. That's just one of our uses. And fitness classes and, other fitness classes. So what does an architect know about a library? Not a whole lot. An architect knows design. So that's why we write the instructions, and then the architect designs the building based on our instructions. And our instructions are informed by the data of, the 14 years of library use under my leadership, and the community feedback that we're getting. So, and trends in library services and best practices in library services. And again, it's my job and it's my hobby. So,
And you do have the experience of the previous LIFNAC committee, which
sitting
Michelle
right
served.
there. Yes.
Yes, right there.
Right.
So
Yeah, I'm pointing
it
at
is-
her.
It is Mary Ann relying on the feedback she's getting now through this process and what we learned, lessons that we learned last time, as well as, some advice from MBLC and right. And so Mary Ann's doing the lion's share of the collating this, but you're not just making it up out of whole cloth, right? Like quite the contrary. Who was next? Mary Ann, were you next? Or
I think
Michelle?
Michelle. Yeah.
Michelle and then Melanie, okay?
Okay, so Tim, I volunteered to work on the children's page. And so I was using the manual that we got from MBLC, and it said a certain percentage of the total building size, right? But we don't know what that's going to be yet. So I thought, I'm going to go to MBLC's website and just see what kind of data they have. So you should check it out. I know we looked at that years ago for another reason, but they tell you, if you look at, you can see all of the towns that are under 2,000 like ours, what size their library is, what size their community room is, what size the children's room and all that is. So you just see there's a wide range, but at least it gives you an idea of what's considered typical. And you can see that you can tell which projects have been more recently built. There's some that most all of them, it looks like to me, and Mary Ann probably knows this better than me, but looks to me like they also put the date of any expansion or renovation. And it looks like from the late 90s is when the libraries really took off. There was one there that was renovated in 1978, but then there are others like ours that are as old as ours. So if I know you like numbers, you were an accountant, right? In your former life. So you might like to look at that website because it gave me a big insight about just the range of sizes of things.
Great.
Thank you. I am going to move to wrap us up. We're over time, even though I added, for reasons known best to my subconscious, half an hour to our agenda. I don't know why I did that. Can I, Mary Ann, I did note that you've got duplicate information in here. The pieces about the high-speed internet, ceiling mounted data projector, picture hanging devices are in there twice.
Okay.
Brad, go ahead.
I think we should separate in our minds what fits in a space from the occupancy. What we are trying to do is design for what we want to fit in the place. And somebody is going to look up the square footage and compare it to a table and say, well, the occupancy is this. And the occupancy is often a meaningless number. That's what I have with the meeting house that I run in New Salem. The occupancy number we're allowed has no practical meaning to me. It isn't the number I would come up with. So think about what you want in the space and ignore that occupancy number.
Great advice. Melanie, did I skip you? Sorry. In the queue.
Okay. So, aren't Lauren and Angela, is that her name?
Andrea.
Andrea, aren't they both also library building experts, and one of them's an architect or used to be an architect? And aren't they helping you in your meetings every week? And didn't they help you figure out what you needed for the community room? Yeah.
Yeah, they pushed back on the size too, actually. And you know something? So this isn't my first rodeo, okay? And so when we did this 10 years ago, so it was a much different process. There was that whole lovely committee, and we met every week, and we sat there and did all those, right, for 2 years. And we did all of those documents together. It was this big group, in-person group effort. It was really wonderful. And then I would go and I would meet with Rosemary Waltos from the Board of Library Commissioners, and she would say, make it bigger, add this. And sometimes I capitulated, and I wasn't quite as, but you know what? Boy, are you going to have to work hard to get me to capitulate to anything this time around, right? And so they explained all their reasons and all their ideas about, and all the things they've learned about things needing to be bigger. And I agreed with all of them. I agree that there will be times when we'll wish that this room could seat 100 people, right? And I agree that this library is just going to be this busy, happening, beehive of a place, because our tiny little 768 square foot library is that, or was that before the pandemic. And but we can't build the library that, we can make it good enough, and I'm going for good enough, and achievable this time, which is what we were doing the last time, 2 years of meetings with a whole bunch of people in the room hollering at each other. But we got so much done. But, and we want to add in a little private study room, and maybe 2 of those, this time around. And we had 3 bathrooms in the plan the last time, and I think we want to keep 3 bathrooms in the plan this time, so I think that room at the Irving Library was big enough. But theirs was poorly designed. I'm perfectly happy to say that, on camera. It had that one little single door entrance, and ours is not going to be designed that way. And I'm also going to fight with the architects. So we're going to have a big double entrance with a sliding door so that there can be overflow. And then that room is going to open into the outside too during the one nice weather month we have every year. And and the other thing too is I think we know now that we need outdoor programming space. We want a pavilion, and so we want to, which isn't going to cost a whole lot of money, like a concrete floor and a shingle top, a shingle roof, because we know now that outdoor programming is something that we're going to really appreciate the ability to be able to do and not have to worry about rain. So we just want to shift the resources and have it be good enough, but flexible, so that we can accommodate more people. And we also will know that there are times when we're going to be like, geez, we wish this could have been bigger, but that won't be most of the time. It'll just be some of the time.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to, oh, sorry. That's a great way to wrap us up. I see, Leslie, that you have your hand raised. And I hear you, Mary Ann, and the climate resilience piece needs to stick to that same set of principles. I hear you clearly. Okay. Leslie, could go ahead, please.
He's muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I couldn't stay in bed because I wasn't getting a clear enough frequency from where I was. I just have a couple quick questions, and I don't expect them to be answered tonight. I'll be at next week's meeting. But will there be, and this is in the interest to me of community participation and transparency. The building program is due mid-October. Will there be something like a 3-page description, summary description of what the program is being submitted, so that townspeople can be aware of how the process is moving forward? And then what happens, and it would be great if this could be also included, what happens between the middle of October and December 2nd when the final application is submitted. And I think these are really important points. I really have been fascinated by tonight's conversation and everybody's commitment to making this work. But these are just a couple questions I have, and I'm the voice from the peanut gallery, wanting the community to be as aware as possible of what's being proposed and why going forward. Mary Ann knows that I was, strong library supporter, voted for the first library, but I'm one of those voices who are also apprehensive of not only having it be to scale, but there really being enough understanding of what's being proposed and why going forward. And it needs to be happening in incremental stages, I think. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. That's probably more than 2 cents worth of thought. We appreciate it. I do think it's past our time to wrap up, and I appreciate your being willing to wait for next week for us to get some answers to you on that, and we'll look forward to seeing you with us then. And that's good. Yes. Go ahead, Tim.
I just want to make sure that we do get those answers. Are you suggesting that you communicate to him, or that we communicate the answers in the next meeting? But what are you saying?
I think we should take a little time to think about what's best. And I would, I think we should take some time to think about it and discuss it at the next meeting.
Okay.
I would love Mary Ann to give us some guidance on, what the opportunities would be. And so I'd like us all just to have a little thinking time. So that, I think there's 2 rules that we're really trying to stick to. One is that when we know something, we share it. And the other is that we are thoughtful about how we answer questions, so that we aren't contributing to misunderstanding ourselves.
Leslie, do you have those questions written down?
Sorry?
Do you have those questions written down? You
I
just
wrote-
you
I
muted
wrote them
yourself,
down.
Les.
I'm on.
You wrote them down, Melanie? Okay.
Yeah, here's,
okay.
Leslie, can I read this back to you and make sure that this is what you meant? Will
Sure.
there be a summary description of the building program released to the public, and what happens between the middle of October and December 2nd when the final application is submitted?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think we can just answer those questions next week. It's and then it's 9:16. I think we can start if it's okay with Michelle and Kate, who are the chairs. We could start next week's meeting with those questions.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
All right. Y'all are a bunch of champions. Thank you so much for sticking through it. A long meeting. Thank you to our guests. We will reconvene at 7:30 on Monday, the 27th. Take care in the meantime. do fill out the survey, do review the documents, do send me edits, do the things. All right, let's go, y'all. Thanks.
Question, Marianne, did you get my survey? I hit submit.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
well, I don't know that it's yours, but
Oh.
I've gotten a bunch of them,
Okay,
so,
okay.
okay, good.
Probably did.
All right,
All right, bye.
okay,
All right.
all right.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night. Okay.